Hi everyone, my name is Eva. I'm an executive wellness consultant. Welcome back to my channel. I have exciting news. I finally finished reading up on and doing research on the Maccabean Revolt. And so I'll be reviewing that in a moment. First, we're going to I'm deciding if I want to do, yes, I think we'll pray first. And then we'll pray the Nicene Creed, and then as well as the prayer to Saint Kateri Tekakwitha. This is her. And I know I've done these prayer cards before. I've shared them with you before. So I know I've shared these. So that's what we're doing. We're only doing one. So that's all the time we have. And then I have a herb recommendation. And then we'll get into the context. And then we'll get into the reading of the Maccabean Revolt. And coincidentally, I'll get into that in a minute, right when I start telling you about the tea tree, the herb that I'll be sharing with you. Okay, so let's start with the Nicene Creed. And actually, what we may want to do is do the sign of the cross, just to clear out the space and bring in God's presence in. So I have my rosary here. We'll do the sign of the cross in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. I like sharing information from the Bible because it hits your subconscious, and that's how you operate on a daily basis. That's how you will make your decisions during the day. And that's why I emphasize on focusing on the stories of God, because I feel like it's helping you and rewiring you to recalibrate and move your focus to what's important, which is God and his message, which is to love one another. And so that's why I bring to you information on the Bible and stories from it to keep you excited and keeping God's stories alive. I thought I might share this because I understand that I'm an executive wellness consultant, and mixing that in with religion, I think, is very important to reprogram yourself by the default, making sure that you are operating and behaving in a way that is walking with God. And I remember I talked about that in the previous video that I did, and so you may want to check that video out right after this one. But when you walk with God, it means that you, a lot like discipline, you let go of all bad behaviors and you let go of things around you that are negative and are not part of God. So it's easier to walk with God. Okay. So we've done the sign of the cross. Now we'll pray the Nicene Creed, and then we'll pray the card that I shared with you a minute ago. And then we'll get into the herb that I recommend and the Maccabean Revolt story, which is part of the Maccabees book, which is the time in between the Old and the New Testament. So we'll get into that. This is the Nicene Creed. I believe in one God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all things visible and invisible. Sorry, I strongly feel that I need to share this at church today. I felt God's presence very strongly. And I feel like I'm rushing now because I actually had a buffalo wrap really late, and I have all of a sudden a tiny bit of energy, even though it's getting close to 11 p.m. And I wanted to mention that to bring God's presence in is very nice to read this prayer. If you feel abandoned in any way, or feeling like you need a little bit of inspiration, or you need God's presence, this is the prayer to pray to bring his presence in. And so this is why I pray it often here. Nicene Creed. Sorry for the interruption, but I wanted to share this with you. I believe in one God, Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all things visible and invisible. I believe in one Lord Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God, born of the Father before all ages, God from God, light from light, true God from true God, begotten, not made, consubstantial with the Father, through all things were made. Through him all things were made. For us men and for our salvation, he came down from heaven, and by the Holy Spirit was incarnate of the Virgin Mary and became man. For our sake he was crucified under Pontius Pilate. He suffered death and was buried, and rose again on the third day. In accordance with the scriptures, he ascended into heaven and is seated at the right hand of the Father. He will come again in glory to judge the living and the dead. His kingdom will have no end. I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Lord, the giver of life, who proceeds from the Father and the Son, who with the Father and the Son is adored and glorified, who has spoken through the prophets. I believe in one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. I confess one baptism for the forgiveness of sins, and I look forward to the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come. Amen. This is very interesting. I just realized this last part. Sometimes I read and know that God and Jesus describes himself as God. As life, and the life of the world to come. And my name means life. It's a very interesting coincidence. I figured I'd share. Okay. Now we'll get into the prayer to Saint Kateri. And this is what it looks like. That's her. Right there. Sorry about that. I'm on a standing desk and it shook. That's to keep you awake and engaged. This is the prayer. It's on there for you backwards because I'm on my phone. But I'll read it to you. Okay, it says, Dear Saint Kateri. Oh, you know what? I'm changing my mind. We want to know who this person is. And so we're going to look her up before I get into this. Because if I don't give you context, it's really like deer in the headlights, as they say, right? Okay, it looks like it says she is the given name Tekakwitha, baptized as Catherine, known as Lily of the Mohawks. Apparently she was born or baptized or born 1656 and died April 17th, 1680 at the age of 24 in Canada near Montreal. So she was baptized. Okay. She was a young woman when she was converted to Catholicism, committing to the life to live as a virgin. She became known for her devotion to Jesus Christ, diligent work ethic, and dedicated prayers for her fellow Native people. She was canonized in 2012, the first Native American saint. Okay, so that's a little bit of context of who she is. We're not going to get too deep into this because we're limited with time. Okay, so this is a prayer. Dear Saint Kateri Tekakwitha, sorry, Tekakwitha, favored child, and Lily of the Mohawks. That's what she was known as. I come to seek your intercession in my present need. So this is a prayer to her. I come to seek her intercession in my present need. And then you mention the need. You can say it to yourself in your mind. They will still hear it, I promise. They're in your consciousness. So that means like outside of your body, in your spirit. So God and the saint will hear it. I admire your virtues of love of God and neighbor, humility, obedience, patience, purity, and the spirit of sacrifice. Help me to imitate your example in my state of life through the goodness and mercy of God who blessed you with so many graces. Please pray for me and help me. Dear Saint Kateri, please obtain for me a very fervent, that means with strong feeling and passion, devotion to the Holy Eucharist. Teach me also to be devoted to my sacrifice. Teach me to also be devoted to my crucified Savior. That I may cheerfully bear my daily crosses for love of Him, God, who suffered so much for love of me. Amen. So that's the prayer. And this is what she looks like. I think this is a picture of what they have of Indigenous or of a Native American, because there are several other images of her I don't know that there's one that's authentically her. It's someone that looks Native American, is what it looks like. I'm getting distracted because I found a painter that I love. And I'm not sure if this is her. This is the painting. So the painting is very, the style of the woman is very familiar as far as the shape of the face that the artist has chosen is very familiar. And it looks like it's somebody else. So it's very similar to someone else that I love. Okay. Getting back to this. All right, so we have now the herb. I'm setting my notes aside. Okay, here's the herb, which is tea tree. This is what it looks like. And there's a description on the bottom of what it is. It says, tea tree is a small tree or shrub with needle-like leaves similar to those of cypress and stalkless yellow or purple flowers. Tea tree oil blends well with lavender, geranium. These are the ones that the oil blends well with these other items: lavender, geranium, chamomile, myrrh, lemon, rosemary, marjoram, I don't know what that is, clary, sage, pine, and spice oils such as clove and cinnamon. Okay, at the top we have, it says here, this small tea tree shrub is a traditional remedy among the Aboriginal people of Australia. So this morning I wrote a note to myself and I mentioned the Aboriginal people of Australia. So it's a coincidence that this is coming up here. I literally opened the page to this particular herb. And then I read the top and it mentioned Aboriginal people, which means it was meant to be that I share this with you. Because I wrote a story about the Aboriginal people or Native Americans in general this morning when I woke up. I'm not sure if you do morning pages, but you may want to look into that. What you can do is normally in the mornings when you wake up, which is really nice, and you can also write down your dream that you had the previous night. Write a page and a half. Really, that's morning pages, 1 to 3 pages, or more if you want. But that's a habit that might be a good idea to start. And I'm debating whether or not to publish what I wrote this morning. But it was an experience I had with a native of another country in Sweden when I traveled a while back. And I'm debating whether or not to publish it and share it. So we'll see. I know what platform to share it on, so we will I will have to think about it. Speaking of coincidences, I recently have joined a yoga studio, and they're having not sure if I can say, maybe a handful of people, a little less than a handful of people, where I've had a conversation where they have had coincidences happen to them as well. And so I thought I'd share that because there's been so many coincidences, but maybe there's synchronicities that have been happening. Okay, originally the leaves were made into a tea, and essence its name. More recently, scientific research has shown that tea tree oil can combat many types of infection. Okay, so it says properties are antifungal and anti-inflammatory. They are immune stimulant. It's antiviral. Its uses is for skin problems such as spots, acne, warts, rashes, insect bites, burns, and blisters. Bullet 2 says it can be used to clean cuts, infected wounds, and it helps skin to heal by encouraging the formation of scar tissue. Sorry if I put the emphasis on wounds, but wounds. I don't know why I'm saying it funny now, but I'm really stickler about pronouncing things correctly, as English is my second language, but practically grew up here. It's just, I like to be accurate. And I've gotten compliments from pronouncing things just right from a public speaker, actually, who taught public speaking. It was really interesting to say that I enunciate, I guess the word is enunciate words correctly. Here we go. I'm just thinking of something really funny that I think I might want to share. Back in high school, there was a girl who was talking to a former best friend of mine that has passed away, Vanessa Cox, and I think the girl's name was Audrey, but I don't remember. Maybe it was someone else. It was Allison Wise, I think is her name. Maybe? Yes. And speaking of enunciating words, this girl that we were walking in the hall with, and Vanessa, I almost called her Vanessa because that's what she liked being called. Vanessa asked Allison Wise, she asked her what the word abundant mean. And she put such an emphasis on the definition that she said, with great abundance. And the way that she had answered the question, Vanessa never failed to make fun of her in the way that she had answered it, but it was just like an innocent way of making fun of, and it was just good fun being with her. And speaking of which, high school friends have been in touch with within the last month, so it's been interesting. Okay, back to this. Where are we? Oh yes, bullet number, got something in my eye. 3. It says the uses are an excellent choice when fighting colds, flu, respiratory infections. What else do we have here? Is a recipe for oil, treatment oil for acne. It says add 4 drops tea tree, 3 drops bergamot. Bergamot is actually found in a lot of perfumes. It's a really nice scent. And 3 drops lavender to 2 teaspoons jojoba oil. So 3 drops lavender and 2 teaspoons of jojoba oil. This mixture is excellent for inflamed or acne-prone skin. Okay, and so that's what we have. The end. Okay, that's the end of the story for herbs. Sorry to close that up so aggressively, but I'm really excited to get into this story about the Maccabees. I debated whether or not back and forth on sharing the information of these 400 years, and I think it's important because it sets the stage for the birth of Jesus, and I'll talk about that later on. But there is the book of Maccabees that is in the Catholic Bible, and I want to explain the fact that why it's important to understand these books, the Maccabees, and it's because it sets the stage to be set for the baby to be born in Bethlehem, which is Jesus. So I wanted to set that context up at the very beginning so we understand why I'm explaining or reading about the Maccabees Revolt. And I did a little bit more research listening to a podcast, and I think I will share the name of the title of the podcast that I listened to in the description box below. And it was Father Mike and Jeff Cavins, who I don't know exactly who that is. Let's see if there's something on here. Google, if there's anything on him. Because they didn't explain who he was. Actually, he's someone that's a big timer. He's written books, apparently. He is an evangelist and author. Is an American Catholic evangelist, author and biblical scholar. He was a Protestant pastor before he rejoined the Catholic Church. Is the creator of the Great Adventure Bible Study program. Was the founding host of the Live on the Rock Show, and on the show on the network of EWTN, and was a host of Morning Air on Relevant Radio. Okay, so that's pretty much who he is. We're not going to get too detailed on everything else about where he comes from, but that's generally who that is, Jeff. He's an author and a Catholic scholar who has written books. Let's see, I wonder. He has written The Great Adventure, The Bible Timeline. Those are just a couple of books. Okay, so I listened to the podcast, and I'm going to do my best to explain what I heard them share, or what I heard Jeff explain the era of the Maccabees Revolt. Okay, so In the previous video, I shared information about the Hellenization era. And this is getting more into the salvation history, is what Jeff emphasized. It was filling the 400 years gap with the first and second Maccabees books. And the Catholics at the time followed the Old Testament, and it was called during that time the Septuagint. Let's see, I'm looking at my notes, that's why I'm looking down. Let's see. So what is happening at the first and second Maccabees is Hanukkah, which is the time when the Jews took back their temple and were able to rebuild it. And the reason why we celebrate it, because it is a part of our history. And we know that the Jews are also our brothers and sisters. Catholics, I guess, don't discriminate. They treat everyone as brothers and sisters because that's what God brought us here to be, brothers and sisters. Even though God created different languages and different religions, the idea is to understand that we're here to love one another and to help one another. And so we call it, this time of Hanukkah, we call it the Feast of Lights. And this makes sense because during Hanukkah, I believe they have the menorah where they light each candle a different day. And they give gifts to each other during that time, small gifts. And then at the end, they give a big gift, something like that. I honestly don't know. But I think generally that's what I've learned. Maybe one day I will get more information about that time at Hanukkah and how the Jewish people celebrated. I just don't have enough information, which is not good. But maybe we'll leave that for the next time. Okay. I'm 30 minutes in, so making sure that I'm not taking too much time up. I don't want this to be 3 hours in. I want to make sure that it's lengthy, but lengthy enough to make it interesting for you, where you're not drifting, thinking about other things, because this is important. This is part of our history, and this is part of you. Because God brought us all down here. What else do I have here that's important? Israel, I guess, had enemies. And I guess there's a saying called eat a big purple grape. And we use it as a form of the different areas of places that Israel had enemies, to understand why there were so much issues or trouble going on in that area. They had the Assyria. That's Assyria. No, sorry. Assyria. Then we have the Babylon, big for Babylon, purple for Persia, and then grape for Greece. So that's the saying right there that Catholics use to remember the list of enemies that Israel had. Eat a big purple grape. So it was Egypt for E, Egypt. A for Assyria. B was big, Babylon. Purple was Persia. Grape was Greece. Again, the saying is eat a big purple grape. And what else is important during this time? Okay, so we're coming out of the era, the Hellenization era, which was the rise of the Greek culture. And the star, or the main character here, is Alexander the Great, which is the person I talked about in the video before this. And the focus here is on, what's interesting is that he wanted to Hellenize the world. Alexander the Great wanted to Hellenize the world, to worship Greek gods and Greek customs, and he was successful at it. Except not in Israel. He left, so we're going to get into that. He left his entire kingdom to the Ptolemies and the Seleucids. I'm reading this for context on the story that I need to read you, because reading it to you is going to be reading like a textbook. And I'm debating whether or not to read the entire thing, because there's 3 sections. But I think the third section is just too overwhelming, because I don't know that I have enough information about to get all the way to the end of it. Okay, so then after the Hellenization came in, the Ptolemies and the Seleucids, they took over after Alexander the Great, and took over that side of the world. Then the Seleucids, so the Seleucids took over, and then enters the character of Antiochus Epiphanes. Oh my goodness. I'm going to have to look it up because I don't want to mispronounce this. Antiochus, and then I'm making that song because I know that I learned.
And consider subscribing for more learning. How do you say it? Epiphanies.
Epiphanies. So Antiochus Epiphanes. I don't know that that's right. I feel like we'll just stick with that for the sake. And we'll abbreviate it and name this person Antiochus. And he was not a good person. He was equivalent to the Ahab and Jezebel in the Bible, is what the priest explained while listening to the podcast. So Antiochus goes to Modin, which is, I believe, in the place in Jerusalem. Yes. And would pick on the people there and make them eat pork. And they resisted because they don't eat pork. And so Antiochus knocks down the temple in Modin in Jerusalem. And this brings the revolt in Antiochus. And this leads to Hanukkah, which starts on the 25th day of Kislev, according to the Hebrew calendar. And to celebrate, the Christians got their temple back. They called it Hanukkah. And so they wanted the lights to shine again. And in the New Testament, we call it the Feast of Lights. And this actually, when I was reading or listening to this story on the podcast the other day, coincidentally, I opened to the book of John, and on the first page, it talked about Jesus and being the life and the light of the world. So it was meant to be that I read this or share this with you. So moving right along, in Modin, Judea's Maccabeus, they were able to wage a war with the so they're basically the Jewish people fought back for their sovereignty. Let's see. And so that's the end of that story. Sorry to cut it so shortly, but because I have another story to share, but I'm debating whether or not to share. I think it's important. I don't know that I have all the information for the next story either, but it's part of 2 Maccabees, Maccabees chapter 2. So I think it's important that I share this second story. Yeah, let's keep going. All right, so I'll do my best to share this other story that they shared in the podcast. And I'm sharing this again so that there's more context when I actually get to read the information from the Illustrated Bible to you. These are just my notes that I took from listening to the podcast and listening to Jeff speak. When they came out of Egypt, Moses built for more context, let's see. This is found in, Maccabees chapter 2, verse 4 through 8. And so when they came out of Egypt, Moses built a tabernacle. And you can see that visually. If you open up any visual or illustrated Bible, you will see that there's mountains of people following Moses, and he's built a tabernacle, some sort of temple in the middle. And inside that tabernacle is the covenant. When I think of the covenant, I feel like it's this big, I don't want to give it a word that is really not meant to be used. So let's just say a golden box. And it has the copy of the 10 Commandments, a bowl of the manna, which I think the manna is the bread. Yes. And thirdly, it has Aaron's rod that was blossoming with almonds. And let's see. So to give you even more context here, the Babylonians came and destroyed Jerusalem in 587 BC. And all of this is actually happening in 167, I believe, BC. So 400 years before, or just about. And Jeremiah, who was a prophet during that time, said, we have to hide the Ark of the Covenant, which is all these items that I just mentioned, before the Babylons come. And so they did. They hid all of it in a cave, and they hid it until they said Jesus would come. So that is that story. Moving right along to the next story, it says Greeks were moving into the Romans. So the Greeks were moving towards the Romans. Bad idea. And sorry, no. So after the power of the Greeks, we're moving into the Romans' power. That's what's going on. After the Greeks, Alexander the Great, and after the Ptolemies and the Seleucids, we have a change of power, which are the Romans. So there was a change of power. It was the Greeks, their power and was ending, and the Romans were coming into power. Julius Caesar was the first true, I don't know how to pronounce this very well, triumvirate. Let me see if I can find the right pronunciation for this. Just popping in one of these CVS breath mints that taste like Listerine. I'm looking up the word here it is.
Triumvirate.
Oh, man. Oh, my goodness.
Triumvirate.
Triumvirate. So it's spelled Triumvirate.
Triumvirate.
Triumvirate time, which meant meaning there was 3 leaders at the time that ran a whole country, basically, that whole region. And so Julius Caesar was the first triumvirate of the 3 leaders in the Roman Republic. Julius Caesar adopts Octavian, and he was part of the second triumvirate of the Roman Republic. And it was basically, yes, so as I mentioned, the country led by 3 people. And Julius Caesar proclaimed himself to be a god. And during his time, he adopted Octavian, one member of the triumvirate, and he wanted to be the leader, and he had to go against Mark Antony, who I believe was the third triumvirate. And so Octavian went to battle. There is a name of the battle. I didn't write it down because there's too many battles to remember. And so Octavian goes to battle with Mark Antony. And as the priest mentions as a joke, not J-Lo's ex-husband, it is just Mark Antony during that time. You're still with me? And so Octavian wins the call. Oh, he wins. And the Senate in the area, in the region, gives Octavian an honorary name, and they rename him as Caesar Augustus. Okay? So Caesar Augustus ruled the Roman Empire for a very long time, and he was known as the Prince of Peace, and he was known to be the son of God, because Julius Caesar thought he was God himself, Zeus, basically. And he ushered in the, what is this pronunciation? I don't think it matters. We're going to skip that. Okay, so he was first considered to be the Prince of Peace, Caesar Augustus. He was the son of God, considered to be the son of God. Caesar was considered himself as a god. And thirdly, he brought in the good news for the world. So that was his significance and his presence and what he meant during that time to that region, to the Roman Empire. Okay. What else do we have here? Okay, so then again, this sets the stage, as I mentioned at the very beginning, this sets the stage for a baby to be born in Bethlehem, who was Jesus, who was considered to be the Prince of Peace. He was the Son of God, and he brought in the good news for the world. So that is why the Maccabees books are important. And it is for those 3 reasons that I mentioned, because it sets the stage for the coming of Jesus. Okay, so now we're going to get into the reading. We're going to make this very sweet and short, because it's getting to be too long. My throat is drying up. And now I'm looking for the Maccabees. There it is. Story. The Maccabean Revolt. That's a cough, not a sneeze, if you're wondering. Because I copied my sister one day. I don't know how. I think I just listened to her cough, and I thought it was a sneeze, and I said bless you, and she said it was a cough. And so now I started coughing like a sneeze. So it's a cough, not a sneeze. But it sounds like a sneeze. Okay. Sorry, I went on a tangent on that. All right, so we have here the Maccabean Revolt. Again, I do these bloopers just so you know I'm not AI, and we keep this exciting. Okay, so who is this guy here? We have a guy here with no nose, founder of a dynasty in 311 BC. I can't see it. Seleucus Nicator founded the Seleucid dynasty, which was to rule for almost 150 years. The Seleucids took control of Judea from the Egyptian-based Ptolemies in 198 BC. This is what he looks like. A statue, a guy with no nose. Okay. We're going to read this because it's part of the Bible. It says here, his armed forces will rise to desecrate the temple fortress and will abolish the daily sacrifice. Then they will set up the abomination that causes dissolution. That's Daniel 11:31. I don't know. I guess it's just getting you ready for the revolt. Which is what I talked about, where the Jewish were almost forced to eat pork. Sorry, I have this bad cough. And they resisted, so they won back. So the Jewish won back the temple, and they were able to rebuild it, and we celebrate it because it's part of the Bible in the Old Testament. Okay. Hopefully this is not as painful. Here we go. The Seleucids dynasty, I actually read some information on. Sorry, I have to share this really quick. I'll share the video in the description box below. Richard Feynman played the drums. Actually, that's true. But that's not the story I was going to tell you. The story is that he talks about in this video, or a speech that he gave, on reading out loud and how necessary it still is, because we go through so many years without reading out loud that we forget how to pronounce words and take the information in by reading and listening to the information audibly. And so the information is able to sink in better, is what I learned. So it's a good thing I'm reading this to you. And you can also listen to, I guess, there's the Reader Lab app and the Speechify app, where it was created by, I think his name is Cliff Weitzman. And it helped him get through college while he was at Brown University. And it helped him so that the information that he was reading was read to him out loud, and he could learn the information better. I'm trying so desperately not to cough. Okay. The Seleucid dynasty, which derives its name from its Greek founder, imposed Hellenistic institutions and culture on the Jews in Judea until the action of, we're going to read this again, sorry, I'm getting distracted. The Seleucid dynasty, which derives its name from its Greek founder, imposed Hellenistic institutions and culture on the Jews in Judea until the actions of Antiochus the fourth, Epiphanes, provoked a revolt. The Hasmonean family of Jewish priests led the Maccabean Rebellion. This is a heavy book, so I'm switching arms for a minute. The Hasmonean family of Jewish priests led the Maccabean Rebellion from 167 BC, which witnessed many heroic acts of resistance and produced several martyrs. No. I'm sorry, English is my second language, so I have a hard time pronouncing these words sometimes because I don't fully know how to pronounce all these words.
Martyr.
Martyr. I knew that. Martyrs, plural. Okay, so the Hasmonean family of Jewish priests led the Maccabean Rebellion from 167 BC, which witnessed many heroic acts of resistance and produced several martyrs. The revolt ultimately won the Jews their independence in 142 BC. Wow, so almost more than 20 years later. The Maccabees took their name from a nickname given to their leader, Judaeus, who was called Maccabeus, or the hammer. Okay, so these are the Seleucids, and the Seleucids took over, as well as the Ptolemies, who I will read on about next, maybe at some point. Yes. And they came after Alexander the Great. That's who came into power. Okay. So when the Syrian-based Seleucid dynasty first took control of Judea in 198 BC, they permitted the Jews to maintain their laws and religious customs. That changed when Antiochus the Fourth, known as Epiphanes, came to power in 175 BC. He sold Jerusalem high priesthood to the highest bidder, as was the custom at the time, for it was also a political position to a man named Menelaus, who was totally unqualified for office and an ardent Hellenist. When Menelaus was ejected from office, Antiochus pulled down Jerusalem's walls and slaughtered many of its inhabitants in retribution. In 167 BC, Antiochus outlawed core Jewish customs such as circumcision. So the Greeks took away these things that the Jews' customs had implemented, one of them being circumcision. They were actually able to reverse it, is what Jeff Cavins explained during the podcast interview. This is strange. And the Sabbath keeping on pain of death, and introduced pagan sacrifices into the temple. His actions proved the catalyst for the Maccabean Revolt. Okay, so meaning all the actions that he took to go against the Jewish customs is what caused the revolt between the Greeks and the Jews, and for the Jews to resist and take back their temple, which they were successful at. And I forgot to mention where maybe we're getting away from what I'm supposed to be doing here, so we're just gonna stick to the story. My rosary just fell and I got caught on a wire, which means I need to pray for the next time. Ugh, that's a symbol because it was saved by a cable hanging like this just now. Okay. The Maccabees. This is the final section and then we're done. If I could only see, because the lighting is just superb in here. I'm being sarcastic. True New Englanders know that they're sarcastic. It's not that bad. I was just being dramatic. Okay. All right. An elderly priest named Matthias, who fervently wished to uphold Jewish law, sparked the revolt in 167 BC. When he refused to offer a sacrifice to the Greek god Zeus and then killed a Jewish apostate, someone who had abandoned his religion, and the Seleucid officer, as they did so, he then summoned his 5 sons to take the hills and challenged others to join him, crying, "Let everyone who is zealous for the law and supports the covenant come out with me." 1 Maccabees 2:27. New Revised Standard Version is where you'll find that. Oh, I'm just resting my elbow here. Okay. The rebels engaged in guerrilla warfare against the Seleucid army, and the Seleucids were the Greeks. When Matthias died in 166 BC, leadership of the resistance force passed his son Judas Maccabeus. So I guess this was Matthias' son. Leadership of the resistance force passed to his son Judas Maccabeus. Antioch was distracted by wars in the east of his empire in 164 BC when Judas recaptured Jerusalem. So there's confirmation that the Jews took back Jerusalem. His regent was forced so that withdrawal the offensive laws. Judas reconsecrated the temple and reestablished Judaism. Unfortunately, Jews elsewhere were still viciously persecuted, and Judas work was far from over. He died in a battle against the Seleucids in 160 BC. The youngest brother, Jonathan, next took over the leadership of the Maccabees and continued the fight against the Seleucid Empire. So Jonathan took over after that, which had been weakened by internal factions following the death of Antioch in 164 BC. Jonathan had himself nominated as high priest in 152 BC, then as general and governor of Judea in 150 BC, and was the first ruler of Hasmonean dynasty. Last portion here. When Jonathan was murdered in 142 BC, Simon, Matthias' only surviving son, led the Maccabean party and negotiated complete freedom from Seleucid taxation and for virtual independence for the Jews. So he created an agreement with the Seleucids through taxation. So it says here, Matthias' only surviving son led the Maccabean party and negotiated complete freedom from Seleucid taxation and virtual independence for the Jews. As a reward, the Jews installed Simon as their hereditary ruler and high priest. However, he was not from the traditional line of Zadok, the dominant priestly family descendant from David's priest in Jerusalem, and this created a deep unease among pious Jews. Simon Maccabee was assassinated in 134 BC, and his son John... sorry, this book is very heavy. John Hyrcanus succeeded from a high priest and ruler of Judah. The Maccabees had succeeded in achieving political and religious freedom, but not for long. So the Hasmonean dynasty is next. John Hyrcanus. Extended Judah's territory and occupied Samaria and Idumea, imposing Judaism on them. He was a good and generally respected ruler, but his successors were less distinguished. It was during the Hasmonean period that several Jewish religious factions emerged, among them the Sadducees, Pharisees. Hyrcanus wanted his wife to succeed him as the head of the government, but when he died in 104 BC, his son Aristobulus seized power. He would rule for only 1 year. However, on his death on 103 BC, man, these men don't last long at all during that time, huh? It's really sad. Die young during that time. We're lucky because we have medication nowadays and more information that we can heal our bodies. So we've come a long way these thousands of years later. Okay, his brother Alexander Hanuus succeeded him. The Pharisees opposed Hanuus, and in response, he openly sided with the Sadducees. Sadducees. His widow, Salome Alexandra, succeeded Junius 76 BC, but it was their elder son Hyrcanus II who held office the high priest during the 11-year reign, and he supported the Pharisees. When Salome died in 67 BC, her younger son Aristobulus II, I can't possibly look up all these names, so we're doing our best here. Sadducee fought Hyrcanus, Hyrcanus for the throne. The resulting civil war left the way open for Rome to seize the chance to take control. All right. Ow, my hand got cramped because it was in one position the whole time. All right, so we're moving right along onto the Rome and its empire. And then after that comes the Hebrew Bible. And then we get into the New Testament. So two more sections here to read to you. took a lot to prepare for this, so I hope that was helpful. I will definitely share the podcast with you about the priest and the author that I mentioned, Jeff, who talk about this Maccabean time, which is part of the Maccabees books that is important. And that's why we are covering it. Okay, so I think that's all I had for you. It is way past my bedtime, past 11 o'clock p.m. But here we are, fulfilling what I feel has been asked of me, and mission accomplished. So then we have 2 more sections in the middle of those 400 years that I'll get to for the next time about the Roman Empire. And actually, coincidentally, that reminds me, I went to a place that donates books, and I found a book. Let me see if I can grab it. It is this one here. It's called I guess it's SPQR, A History of Ancient Rome by Mary Beard. This is a relatively new book, I'm sure of it, because it just came out maybe a couple years ago or last year. Let's just see when it was. Oh. I don't know why I've seen this book cover everywhere recently. But it looks like it says copyright 2015. So apparently it came out in 2015. Okay. So this is the book. SPQR, A History of Ancient Rome, Mary Beard. So it's a coincidence that we're getting into the Roman era. They have all these cool pictures inside. Might be worth getting a copy for yourself. And you know who else does a really good job at explaining this era is Ryan Holiday. He's a really good person to go to for the Roman era. So we will be doing more research on this section. Yay. As they say, we are happy about that. It'll be interesting to see what we find out and what we discover, so I can share it with you. And therefore, you'll know kind of the highlights of what's necessary to understand. Otherwise, I feel like some people just don't really, I'm not sure if they really have an interest or understand, and so it kind of goes over their head. And what's important here is to really have a good understanding so that it sinks into the heart and you have better conversations with people. And so this is what it's about. It is about sharing the wealth and knowledge. And the wealth, and I mean, is the knowledge that's inside the Bible, and which is the number 1 book sold in the world. It's sold billions of books. And so that is your secret to connecting with more people through the world, because it is through connection that you're able to feel fulfilled, actually. And the way to have longevity in life is to have better connections with people. And it doesn't have to be your immediate family. It can be people that really do respect you and really have an interest in your life and find your life to be interesting. And so you can connect thoroughly or fully through the Bible. Okay, so I think that's all I had for you. I'm very excited about the next section, because that means I really have to do a lot of research on the Roman Empire and see what we can find for you. All right. So thank you for taking the time to learn with me today. Please share this with anyone you think this might be useful, and please hit the subscribe button so you know when I upload my next video, because I don't know if it'll be next week or the following week, and I'm very busy right now. And yeah, share this with anyone that you think might think that this is useful. And so thank you for your time and your presence, and I hope you have a great day.